Well, foreign adversaries are weaponizing information. That according to the director of the NSA. So, number one, what does that mean? And number two, what about the fact the United States has made it legal for our own government to propagandize our own population? Let's give it a reality check you won't see anywhere else.
Reality Check with Ben Swann, powered by Smart Cash.
Army General Paul Nakasone, who heads both NSA and Cyber Command, said recently that both the military and the nation as a whole are taking steps to counter foreign information warfare and to use information operations against adversaries. Specifically, he's talking about Russia and China. The point that both of those nations have taken steps to control information on the internet in order to prevent their populations from being influenced by the U.S. He was talking about the Arab Spring uprisings that began in 2011. Nakasone says they were fueled by social media and the internet, and they led to the unseating of several governments throughout the Middle East and North Africa. Quote, "We looked at this as an indicator of how powerful a free and open internet can be in the world. And we looked at this from that lens. But I would also say that our adversaries looked at it from a completely different lens, as an existential threat to their existence." That's what Nakasone said, but what he didn't tell you, and what you may not know, is that the U.S. government has countered the influence, they say, of foreign propaganda by passing a law that allows our government to propagandize its own people. See, the 2016 version of the NDAA, or the National Defense Authorization Act, signed by President Obama, included a provision called the Countering Foreign Propaganda and Disinformation Act of 2016. It was sponsored by Ohio Senator Rob Portman, and it was actually designed, he says, to combat foreign propaganda from Russia, China, and Iran. Senator Portman said this about the act at the time, quote, "Surprisingly, there is currently no single U.S. governmental agency or department charged with the national-level deployment, integration, and synchronization of whole-of-government strategies to counter foreign propaganda and disinformation." Again, that was in 2016. See, this bipartisan bill established an interagency center housed at the State Department. Its job is to coordinate and to synchronize counter-propaganda efforts throughout the U.S. government. Okay, but it actually does much more than that. It also creates a grant program for NGOs, for think tanks, and civil society as well as those who are already engaged in, quote, counter-propaganda related work. But let's be clear, this concept was actually sold as countering propaganda. But here's the thing. If government agencies put out or fund information that is disseminated to the public for the purpose of altering or controlling a point of view, isn't that the very definition of propaganda? Because in fact, the definition of propaganda is this, quote, "information, ideas, or rumors deliberately spread widely to help or harm a person, group, movement, institution, nation, etc." So this law funds U.S. propaganda against its own citizens. Now, before you object and say, wait, that can't be true because it's illegal for the U.S. to propagandize its own citizens, well, you were right. It was. Until 5 years ago. In 2013, that version of the National Defense Authorization Act removed a ban on U.S. government creating and then showing propaganda to U.S. citizens. That ban had been in place since 1948, and the 2013 amendment struck down a ban on domestic dissemination of material produced by the State Department and the Independent Broadcasting Board of Governors. See, it neutralized the Smith-Mundt Act of 1948 and the Foreign Relations Authorization Act of 1987, which have been passed to protect U.S. audiences from our own government's misinformation campaigns. So what you need to know is that in 2013, when that act passed, most media said, don't worry, because even though it's now legal for the U.S. government to create propaganda, there's no funding mechanism. But in 2016, the funding mechanism was added. And now in 2018, the head of the NSA says we are in a weaponized information war with Russia and China. There was a reason why, for over 60 years, it was illegal for the U.S. government to propagandize the public. Because forget about Russia and forget about China. That law was in place to protect the public from our own government. So what is the answer here? Well, how about the media in America just tells the truth, just reports facts, does not act as arms of political parties on the right or on the left, doesn't act as a mouthpiece for government institutions. See, if we want to combat propaganda, both foreign and domestic, then we should be pushing for a free and open system that informs the public, rather than trying to control what they believe. That's Reality Check. Let's talk about that right now on social media.